What's up everyone, it's Sprometheus, and as you're probably aware, there are hundreds, if not hundreds of thousands of videos on YouTube telling you how to make better coffee. But from what I can tell, there aren't many, if any, telling you how to actually buy it. So today, I'm going to show you how to make informed buying decisions for those precious beanie babies. As you may have already noticed, some roasters just lay a complete barrage of information on their label, and others tend to keep it pretty basic. But in the end though, that information doesn't mean anything if you don't understand how it influences what's in your cup. In my opinion, there are 5 major pieces of information that are on most specialty coffee bags that we should pay attention to. Those factors being flavor notes, origin, altitude, varietal, and processing. And with the massive shift in retail buying that 2020 has brought on, more and more people are buying their coffee online. And this means they can't just easily ask a cafe staff person to help them pick out a coffee, so understanding the subtleties based on what you read on the label is hugely important and can definitely save you from having some coffee buyer's remorse. I've covered flavor notes at some length in a previous video, but I think the broad thing to understand is that they can be a bit misleading, but it's not intentional. Let's take for example this note of mandarin orange. Many of us know what a mandarin orange tastes like, but will sipping on this coffee taste like biting into a mandarin orange or chewing on a slice of mandarin orange? No, not likely, but it's not impossible. Maybe that mandarin orange note is more of an acidity description, where you get that sweet citric bite on the tip of your tongue. Or maybe it's just an aftertaste. Regardless of where these notes fall, or if they even fall at all, they should be taken in a more general sense. We roasters love to pick out very unique and specific flavor notes in our coffee, but those are done under very particular and careful tasting practices. But as a consumer, you should be able to look at the notes on the bag and understand them in a broader sense, and when you take it home, you should be able to taste something in that realm. Now this seems like the most obvious of all the sections, but it's a bit more complicated than what meets the eye. In my early coffee experience days, I used to think you could narrow down an entire region to a specific flavor profile. But as time went on and I tried more coffees, it became obvious that that wasn't the case. With current advancements in farming and processing, which I'll talk about more in a bit, the lines are definitely much more blurry. But there is no denying that things as specific as the soil type in a specific region of the world can have a major effect on the coffee that's grown there. Like wine, coffee is a terroir-based experience.
That's just fancy talk.
Terroir is a characteristic taste and flavor imparted into something by the environment where it's produced. Of course, some origins are known for fruitier flavors and others are known for chocolatey flavors, but in the end, you're going to have to do a little bit of trial and error to find those origins you prefer. And this is where those flavor notes on the bag really come in handy as a helpful guide. The altitude where a coffee is grown is an often overlooked and little understood factor for most coffee buyers. The fact is, higher elevations create the most sought after coffees in the world. The cooler temperatures at higher elevations slows down the production cycle of the trees, which in turn allows its beans to mature for longer. That imparts more complex sugars into each bean, creating a deeper and more complex flavor. But that's not to say that lower elevation coffees aren't good or even sought after. They just tend to taper off those complex flavors and tend to lean more into the mellow, like chocolate and nutty, so in the end, it comes down to personal preferences. The best way to look at coffee varietals is the same way we look at apples. Apples come in many different varieties. You can get a Honeycrisp, a Red Delicious, and a Fuji, and even though they may look a little bit different, they all tend to taste relatively similar, but depending on your experience, you may be able to taste the difference.
How do you like them apples?
Coffee is the exact same way. Certain origins and regions have very specific coffees that grow there, and even though they are related, depending on your experience, they can taste a bit different. But generally speaking, the differences between them can be very subtle, and there are often more than one in most bags of coffee, which is why varietal is one piece of information that I rarely consider when choosing to buy a coffee. The way your coffee is processed has a huge impact on the flavor of your coffee, so it's something that's definitely worth understanding. Basically, processing is what happens to the coffee cherry and coffee bean after they've been picked and sorted. And there are 3 popular forms of processing, and those are washed, natural, and honey. The first and most popular form of processing is called wash, or otherwise known as wet processing. This method quickly removes the fruit from the bean through a depulping and washing process. From there, it is dried carefully on raised beds or patios. This process is known to create coffees with cleaner, clearer flavors and have a brighter acidity. The second most popular process is called natural, otherwise known as dry processing. Once the coffee is picked and sorted, the bean is then left inside the intact cherry and dried carefully to avoid mold and over-fermentation. This allows sugars from the fruit to be imparted into the bean itself, and then after a varying amount of time, the fruit is then removed from the bean. This process is known to create coffees with those intense, deep fruit flavors like strawberry and blueberry, but they've also been described as fermented and wine-like.
Obviously, it's not really delicious like hot chocolate or Coke, but for wine...
The third process is known as honey, otherwise known as semi-washed. The name can definitely be a bit misleading, and it has nothing to do with honey, but this process splits the difference between washed and natural. After picking and sorting, only a certain amount of the fruit flesh is left behind, and this is called mucilage. Those beans with the most mucilage are called black honey, followed by red, yellow, and the least amount being called white honey. They are then left to dry where they become sticky, like honey, until the time comes for them to be washed fully. This process generally creates a best of both worlds experience in the cup, where you get some of that dense fruit and fermentedness from the natural process, with also some of that clean crispness of the washed process. So as a coffee drinker, whether you're casual, an emerging enthusiast, or a full-on pro, being able to fully understand and articulate your coffee preferences based solely on the label is a great skill to have, especially in this new age of e-commerce dominance. But now I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on this video? Do you think it might be helpful in picking out coffees based solely on the label, or do you think I missed something that's important? Also, those of you who buy coffee online, I'm curious to know which section you actually look at that helps you pick out coffees that you know you're going to enjoy. Drop those answers in the comments down below, along with any other questions you might have, and as always, I'll see y'all next week. And of course, a big thank you to my September Patreons, Ads, James B, Jacob P, David, Christopher, John K, Squeegee, Roe, Brian, Lisa, Obo, Andre, Rick Racer, Sean, Noel, Spookus, Bound Coffee, Mika, Samantha, Nathan, Claire, Steven, James K, Josh, Andrew Horrison, Bobby, Corey C, Curry, Jeff Roth, Ninja Warrior Coffee, Testing 123, Jason, Dave B, Jerry, RD, Tim, Matt, Tony, Zachary V, Tyler, UK Espresso, Robert, Underdunk, Jeffrey, and Oliver. And of course, a big thank you to the Barista and Barback tiers. If you want any information on my Patreon, there's a link in the description and in the upper right hand corner right now. And of course, a big thank you to you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit that little bell button for notifications of new videos posted every Friday. Follow my Instagram at Sprometheus for content throughout the week, my blog at Sprometheus.com, my coffee at littlegiant.coffee, and as always, stay caffeinated. Pony Boy.